It was late at night on Halloween last year. I was stressing out about an assignment that I did not want to do, and to distract myself, I checked my channel, only to find a comment by Soa5766, requesting that I do a ground-type Nuzlocke with only heavy Pokemon. Now, I'd been trying to figure out a run based on height or weight, but I couldn't really figure out how to put it all together. But this comment was the first suggestion I'd ever gotten for this channel, and I didn't want to let Soa down, so I started digging into how I could possibly make this run work. First, I needed a good cutoff point. 200 kilograms works, it's the first place where you get a heavy ball modifier, and it's the highest damage category for Grass Knot. Cutting out any legendaries or megas, this gives me 11 Pokemon. But then, I needed to figure out what game to do this in. After a while, I narrowed it down to 4. Platinum, Ultra Sun, Shield, or Legends Arceus. Except I don't really think that Arceus is a great game to Nuzlocke in. It's a fun game, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think it works well for this kind of challenge. I might talk more about that in a future video though. And also, I've already got a decent amount of Alola on my channel, so not Ultra Sun. So here, it's really between Platinum and Shield. Both of these games have a full party's worth of heavy ground types. And while most of them are the same, in Platinum I get access to Golem and Torterra, while in Shield I can get Palossand and Golurk. While I like all these Pokemon, I think this run will be a little more manageable in Platinum because of Torterra's grass type and early access, so I'm picking it. I'm sorry I'm doing 2 Platinum videos back to back, by the way. I actually have a bunch more videos I'm working on, but I really wanted to get this one out before the end of the year, and I know my videos can sometimes get a little hectic on the production side. Now, here are the rules of the run. They're in the description, but in short, I can only catch the first viable encounter in each location, I can't catch duplicates of a line, there are no items in battle outside of held items, battle mode is on set, and there are level caps equal to a gym leader or league member's ace. Additionally, because half my potential Pokemon are trade evolutions, I'm allowing for trades this run. Finally, with one exception, none of these Pokemon start out very heavy. In Turtwig's case, they're not even a ground type. So I'm also going to fudge my normal rules just a bit and allow for full evolution lines so that I'm not playing the entire early game with just an Onix. Okay, enough monologuing, let's get started! I name my rival, get my first hunk, Turtwig, who I named Beefcake. His bravery and bulk are going to give me the strength I need to get through many a battle in this upcoming run. Next, I flatten my rival twice, and now I can finally catch my second Pokemon. In Oreburgh Gate, I catch a Geodude I named Chunk. He's got a pretty solid docile nature, and him and his rocky head give me another great Pokemon to take Rourke on. I can actually get another Pokemon too in Onix, but the one I find nearly squeezes Beefcake and Chunk to death, so I have to get rid of her before she can get rid of me. I'll have another chance to get one kinda soon enough though. But before that, it's time for the Rourke experience. My future earthy behemoths can take his on pretty well, so I'm not worried about him outside of his Cranidos. I lead with Beefcake. An Absorb takes out his Geodude, and then 4 more get rid of his Onix after a heal, bringing in Cranidos. Cranidos hits hard, and Onix just screeched Beefcake, so this actually is a little stressful, but Quick Claw activates, letting a Razor Leaf get rid of Cranidos for the win. As a ground-type trainer, I wasn't that stressed about Rourke though. Gardenia, on the other hand, is terrifying. After a very easy squashing of Mars's Purugly, taking only a couple flinches in return, it's time to take her on. Now, what's nice about this rule set is that I actually don't need my Pokemon to meet the challenge requirements yet. As a result, I can use Beefcake, who despite evolving into a Grottle, still resists grass, and isn't as affected by Gardenia's signature move as his evolution will be. That doesn't mean this fight is easy though. In fact, basically everything needs to go right in order for me to win. At least from what I can tell. First, I need to set up Curse at least 5 times. This is so that without Reflect, I'll be able to get rid of Roserade in a single bite. Meanwhile, Gardenia's Turtwig can set up Sunny Day, the aforementioned Reflect, and can do little bits of damage with Grass Knot. Because I get to 5 Curses while Reflect is still up, Turtwig survives Bite on half health, meaning that next turn, before I KO, Grass Knot brings Beefcake under half, activating my only Oranberry at the moment. In the Gen 4 games in particular, I try to plant whatever berries I think will be useful in order to have a tiny armada of them by the endgame. But I'll talk more about that in a bit. At least Reflect's gone now as Roserade comes in. And while she doesn't go for Grass Knot, Stun Spore isn't the best either. I guess I'm doubling down on my slow, heavy, and bulky strategy now, but Beefcake doesn't freeze up, so Bite gets the KO. But Roserade isn't Gardenia's only threat. Cherrim is left, and because the sun's still out, she shows up in her sun form. But just goes for Safeguard for some reason, so one more Bite gets the win. What a weird throw. This run will eventually get a little bit easier, but not soon, because I've got the battle against Jupiter coming up. And here's where Beefcake not being a ground type yet comes back to bite me. I can't really pummel Skuntank with him, but I also can't really sweep with Chunk because Jupiter's Zubat knows Giga Drain. As a result, I have to lead with Beefcake. A bite takes Zubat below half after a wing attack does a third. I thought this thing was supposed to be weak. Now, I need to avoid a crit to not wipe, but thankfully, the next wing attack doesn't crit, so one more bite brings in Skuntank. I swap to Chunk on a weak Night Slash before Chunk's Quick Claw activates to use Magnitude. 5. Okay, well let's try that again. After a Smokescreen and a Poison Gas that misses, we get a Magnitude 4. Not the right direction at all. Poison Gas connects next turn, but this time I get a Magnitude 7, bringing Skuntank to a Sliver. I thought this was a KO in the moment until I saw the Citrus Berry activate, and I was so sad. But no worries, because after another Night Slash brings Chunk to just 5 HP, I get Magnitude 7 again, which connects to get rid of Skuntank and Jupiter, for now at least. Basically every section of the run after Rourke and before Byron is going to be tricky. Because so many major trainers in Platinum are strong against ground or rock types, I mostly just have to rely on Beefcake to save me throughout the mid-game. But, right before Fantina's gym, Chunk evolves into a Graveler, so we're at least getting nice and bulky. I made the evolution cap for trades level 37, so we're not gonna get Golem for a minute, but I don't think I'll even need him. Now, Fantina's the antithesis of my team. Her Pokemon are light and float. There's no way I can easily crush them. I think nonetheless that my best bet is a similar strategy to Gardenia. I lead with Beefcake, who sets up Curse as Duskull goes for Future Sight. Next, Bite crits to get rid of her, bringing in Miss Magus. Miss Magus is scary because she also has access to Confusion. If I get too unlucky here, Beefcake could freeze up too much, and Miss Magus definitely has the strength to tear through him and Chunk if that happens. But thankfully, Bite hits, leaving Miss Magus in the red before her Citrus Berry. Then, after a Shadow Ball, one more connects to take Miss Magus out. All that's left is Fantina's Haunter, who's much weaker. After Beefcake tanks a Shadow Claw, he wakes up to fell her in a single bite. It just goes to show that even when we can't crush our enemies, my team of hunks can just chomp them to their, in this case, second deaths. Because I'm just a team of 2, there's not really a ton of easy fights in this stretch of the game. My fight with my rival is no exception, because all his Pokemon are strong against at least one of mine. I lead Chunk by accident, and then swap into Beefcake to get rid of Staravia's Intimidate on a double team. I swap back on another, but Quick Claw activates, letting me outspeed and somehow connect with a Rock Blast that barely KOs in 2 hits. This brings out Roselia, so I go into Beefcake on a Mega Drain. Bite does over half, but Beefcake gets poisoned in the process, so after another attack KOs, he's at half health, and I need to switch. Going into Chunk as Monferno goes for Flame Wheel. He outspeeds to do almost half with Mach Punch, but now I can finally attack. And the Magnitude gods favor me as I roll Magnitude 9. So now that Monferno's crushed, it's just Weasel left. Here, I swap back into Beefcake so a Mega Drain can get back a bunch of the health he lost for the win. But old Stanley over here is going to be a big problem for some time to come. At least now I can finally get some new Pokemon though. I run around for about 15 minutes to find a Hippopotas in Rune Maniac Cave, which I catch and name Unit. Then, on Route 214, I almost immediately encounter a Rhyhorn I catch and name Tank. She's got the first bad nature of the run, boosting her special attack and dropping her speed. But she has her much better ability in Rockhead. Solid Rock, which she'll get when she evolves, is one of my favorite Pokemon abilities, so I'm really excited to use this one. And that's not all. Beefcake evolves into Torterra, giving me my first actually heavy ground type. After a few hours getting everyone to the cap, a real struggle with how awful Unit's moveset is at the moment, I'm ready for Maylene. Even though half my team is rock types, this isn't a horrible battle for me. I lead with Unit to get a Sandstorm up. Then, I swap into Beefcake on a Fake Out. An Earthquake, which Beefcake somehow learns at just level 32, gets rid of Meta-type pretty easily, bringing in Lucario. Lucario outspeeds to hit a Force Palm, doing around a third. Thankfully no paralysis though. As an Earthquake KOs, I realized just how bad that could have been. I probably should have given Beefcake a Cherry Berry instead, but I thought that the extra recovery could be useful. Thankfully I went unpunished for that. This just leaves Machoke though. An Earthquake actually doesn't kill. I think Maylene will heal, so I go for Leech Seed, but she actually doesn't. So at the end of the turn, Sandstorm and Leech Seed combine to give Beefcake an easy win. With 4 Pokemon, we're starting to crush even the bulkiest trainers. But definitely not Wake. Even after Unit evolves into Hippowdon and Chunk evolves into a Golem to give me a couple new landmasses at my disposal, I don't have a good way to beat him. See, the problem is that all but one of my Pokemon is weak to water. And not only that, but Wake also has ice moves to counter him too. There's only one way I can see myself getting around this. In Pastoria City, there's a woman who hands out berries. Now, these berries are important because they minimize weaknesses for a single hit. Now, she only hands out 1 a day, so I had to roll the dice for a bit, but once I get a little berry farm going, I get what I need. Given how difficult a couple fights in particular are coming up, having a bunch of type coverage berries is going to be the best way on average to keep my Pokemon safe. So with all that, let's see this fight in action. Wake's Gyarados has Intimidate, so Chunk can't smash him up without a ton of luck. But I can take a Waterfall with an equipped Pasha Berry, thankfully avoiding a flinch, which is something I'll need to do a lot this battle, to fire back with a Rock Blast that brings Gyarados to the red with 4 hits. I can work with that, and even though my second only gets 2 hits, one of those crits, bringing Gyarados right back after Wake heals. But now Chunk can't stay in, so I've gotta swap. I go into Tank on a Brine. That does so much more than I'd like! Thank you, Pasha Berry number 2, for keeping her alive! Okay, well that didn't work. I guess it's finally time to bring in the beef. I swap to him on another Brine before Gyarados goes for Waterfall, which Beefcake tanks above half. And no flinch means that a Razor Leaf gets rid of Gyarados, bringing Floatzel in. I brace for an Ice Fang, but even with Beefcake's attached Yache Berry, anything going wrong here means a total wipe. But Ice Fang does exactly what it's supposed to do, sending Beefcake under a quarter health, activating Overgrow. Now a Razor Leaf gets rid of Floatzel outright, and with Wake's biggest threat down, one more Razor Leaf easily gets rid of Quagsire 2 for the win. I'm relieved, to say the least. That battle required a ton of luck. It's probably the hardest one of the run, at least for a while. So getting this win not only proves we're a better bulker than the bulkiest trainer in Sinnoh, it also means I'm almost done with the hardest part of this run. But the rival battle is going to be tough. Not as tough as Crush or Wake exactly, but with a powerful, evolved team, my Pokemon are in a bit of a tight spot. I lead with Chunk. Even holding a Rock Incense, after Intimidate, Rock Blast only does half, as Staraptor goes for Double Team. This lets him hit much harder than I'd like after my next Rock Blast misses. My third Rock Blast connects though to drop the bird, but 2 takedowns definitely mean that Chunk isn't surviving Rose Raid. As a result, I need to switch. I go into Beefcake on a Giga Drain, but there's not much Rose Raid can do to him. Except set up Toxic Spikes. Ugh, that's gonna make this battle a lot harder than it needs to be. At least an Earthquake takes Rose Raid out, sending in Heracross. Here, I swapped a unit on a weak Aerial Ace. The Pecha Berry I gave her just in case activates, so now she's free to start attacking. After Brick Break crits, yikes, Fire Fang does over half damage. But this means that I need to just hope Heracross doesn't crit again. I don't have a big window to work with, so a high roll might be bad too. I go for Thunderfang, Brick Break connects, and Unit survives in the red to KO Heracross. That thing's gonna cause me so many problems the rest of this game. But at least he's gone for now. Now, I need to pray that Floatzel doesn't use Pursuit. But somehow, I go unpunished as I swap back into Beefcake. Though, I guess Poison counts for something. But even though a Razor Leaf gets rid of Floatzel, after Poison damage, Beefcake's at under half health when Infernape comes in. With no idea what to do, I've gotta just hope he survives a Flame Wheel. I click Earthquake, and he survives on 5 HP to KO Infernape for the win. That's one of the tightest battles I've had so far, so we're really not out of the woods yet, but at least I don't have to fight him again until the league. But now, the ground really starts to shift in my favor. I can go to Iron Island, where 3 things happen. First, I can get a Protector. That's gonna be really important soon, but not quite yet. Next, I can finally get my Onyx. It takes a little while, but I find and catch her, naming her Big Boned. She's got a great neutral nature, and is somehow my third Pokemon with Rockhead. Again, not complaining at all here. It's so good in Gen 4. Then, at the very end of Iron Island, after squashing Team Galactic, I find a Metal Coat. And by leveling Big Boned up, she turns into a Steelix, giving me some phenomenal type coverage. And this lets me finally take on Byron. One of the hardest gym leaders in Sinnoh, Byron's... who am I kidding? Anyways, after decimating the Canalave Gym's structural stability, it's time for the lake battles. Now, while these aren't exciting, in the process, Tank gets to level 42 at Lake Valor, evolving into Rhydon. Then, at level 43, with the Protector attached, she evolves into a Rhyperior, one of my all-time favorite Pokemon. What a glow-up from a Pokemon described as so stupid it forgets why it started running. That always made me so sad as a kid. But considering how much I love the Ground-type, Rhyperior is barely in the top half of Pokemon I get to use this run. In fact, after finishing off Jupiter, I'm about to get another favorite. On Route 217, I catch a Swinub I name Fridge. He's got the clear worst nature of the run, a minus attack plus speed timid nature, but with a little love, he's gonna be a killer. And with another level, he evolves into a Piloswine before evolving into a Mamoswine a level later, once he learns Ancient Power from the Move Reminder. And this is my full team for the rest of the run, all bulked up and fully grown. And I'll need them to face Candace. Candace is the last tough gym leader of the run. She's got a pretty hard strategy of Hail plus her Frostlass's evasion in order to stack up a lot of damage, while not letting you hit her in return. This is especially bad because all but 2 members of my team are weak to ice, so she can hit really hard. Thankfully, my berry stash is starting to pay off, as I got a couple of Yachi berries and a Chople berry I can use for this fight. But enough talk, let's see how this goes. I lead Big Bone. She's got a massive defense, and isn't weak to ice, while allowing me to hit for super effective damage against her whole team, with the admittedly low accuracy Iron Tail. After taking an Ice Shard, I Iron Tail Sneasel away, sending out Piloswine. But here, Piloswine just sets up Hail, so an Iron Tail gets the job done, bringing in Abomasnow. With Snow Warning now up, I've got to start thinking about how to get rid of it, but I think for now, I need to attack. Abomasnow just has too much coverage to not. And Abomasnow even proves this point by firing off a Focus Miss that Big Bone's Chople berry would have covered otherwise. Now though, I can connect with Iron Tail to leave Abomasnow in the red. This is actually perfect though. Because Candace is gonna heal, I can use this turn to set up Sandstorm, making things much harder for her ice types. And because my first Iron Tail got a defense drop, my second KOs Abomasnow outright. That just leaves Frostlass. But despite her setting up Double Team, Iron Tail connects, giving me a clean win against the gym leader that I was probably most worried about after Wake. Admittedly, I got lucky with Iron Tail connecting as much as it did. That's basically never happened to me before, and I don't know if it would have even been on Big Bone's moveset if it wasn't for this battle, so take that into account. But even with a bit of luck, I still had a couple backup strategies to get me across the finish line if things went south. Mostly involving Fridge's sheer bulk, neutrality to ice, and access to higher accuracy moves to get the job done. But after this, I can watch Stanley get flattened again, which feels great after that last battle. Then I head on over to Veilstone, where my beefcakes can do some wrecking of their own. But this sequence, while tricky, isn't that hard. Instead, let's fast forward to Spear Pillar. One thing to note here is that I needed a rock climber, so I had to leave Big Bone in the PC. This was a mistake. Given Cyrus's strength against grass types, I should have left Beefcake instead, but I didn't realize that until later. Instead, I've got to take on Mars and Jupiter together with old Stanley. Now, this battle is always incredibly iffy, but even still, I think it shouldn't be too bad this time. I lead unit, setting up Permanent Sandstorm. A Crunch crits on one of the Bronzors, and gets the drop as both Bronzors set up screens. Munchlax just misses a Screech. Already not off to a great start there, Stanley. But a second Crunch gets rid of Jupiter's Bronzor as Mars's uses Extra Sensory on unit. But she's still well over half, so I'm fine keeping her in as Golbat comes out. Except I forgot Golbat has Giga Drain! Even though unit falls under half, Golbat's special attack just isn't good enough to do more than that. and Thunderfang crits to get rid of Golbat outright. Pretty lucky, honestly. Munchlax gets confused, but lands a Screech anyways, and now with Skuntank out, I think it's time to swap. I switch to Tank on a Flamethrower, as Bronzor goes for extra Sentry on Munchlax, who stockpiles?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Skuntank targets him for some reason though, as a Stone Edge brings Skuntank to half. Then, after Bronzor extra Sentries Munchlax, he swallows, so he's still dead to another hit, but this at least wasted the screens. That means that now, a Stone Edge brings Skuntank to a Sliver, letting her fall to the Sandstorm as Bronzor sets up Light Screen. Fine by me, I've got a team of physical attackers anyways. Plus, now that Munchlax is gone, Stanley can send in an actual threat. He goes with Infernape, but now that it's a 2-on-1, I'm not that worried. Infernape one-shots with close combat, which is perfect for me. Then, after a weak punishment, Air Cutter sends Infernape below half as Stone Edge misses. Infernape decides to burn Golbat, which is a choice you could make, and Golbat responds by flattening him as he deserves. Stone Edge gets rid of her immediately after. Stanley sends out Floatzel, but seeing as it's just Purugly left, our fighting coverage should be more than enough. A Brick Break sends Purugly to half before her Citrus Berry activates, letting a Hammer Arm get the kill and the win. Not the worst I've ever seen from the Gen 4 rival, but definitely a far cry from the best. But now, the next battle is the one I'm really sweating over. After a jaunt through the Distortion world, it's time to battle Cyrus. This iteration of his team is terrifying to me. I don't really have any surefire ways to win, so whatever strategy I come up with is going to involve a whole lot of risk. Let's see how it goes! I lead unit setting up Sandstream. Cyrus's Houndoom is terrifying because he can hit hard and set up status. Thankfully, Flamethrower does under half before an Earthquake brings his big threat in. Gyarados has water, ice, and ground coverage, meaning basically my whole team is susceptible to him. Thankfully, I've prepared for this by attaching a Paso Berry to unit, letting her survive a waterfall and thankfully not flinch in order to use Yawn. Then, I swap into Beefcake on another waterfall. If Gyarados had gone for Ice Fang, Beefcake's held Yachi Berry would have allowed him to tank the hit. But now that Gyarados is asleep, I swap into the Pokemon I really want in, Tank. Then, as Gyarados stays asleep, a Stone Edge KOs. But we're not out of the woods yet. Weavile comes out, and he's also scary because of Ice Punch, so I'm counting on Solid Rock to save Tank here. She flinches from a Fake Out, then an Ice Punch does about a third. But no freeze means that Tank can connect with a Hammer Arm to KO! Honchkrow is Cyrus's last threat, but I think Tank can take him. Honchkrow uses a hard Night Slash, but Tank survives and nails him with a Stone Edge for the KO! Cyrus just has Crobat left, so I go into Chunk on an Air Slash. After a Toxic I hope doesn't mess me up too much, Rock Blast connects, and is only 2 hits. If we'd gotten just one more, this fight would have been over. But instead, Cyrus heals, meaning a Double Edge doesn't quite do half. Making matters worse, Crobat goes for Confuse right next turn, but Chunk breaks through to miss Rock Blast. With Toxic piling up, I need to switch. Fortunately, I've got the perfect solution left. I swap into Fridge on an Air Slash, and because Sandstorm Chip's been piling up, an Ice Shard gets rid of Crobat faster than a Poketuber can make a joke about Cyrus only being 27. And with that, I catch Giratina, get Big Boned out of the box, and take on Volkner. One of these days, he's gonna be as tough as the games try to tell us he is, but not today. 4 Earthquakes is all I need to send his team to the scrapyard. Now, Fire Punch could have burned, and Ice Fang could have frozen or flinched, but I'm a ground trainer. It's not like I've got a loss for options here. And with that, it's onto the league. And while my team are nice and mostly bulked up for the Elite Four, I've got an even scarier battle first. Despite a big level advantage against Stanley, his team packs a serious punch, with tons of coverage against my thick team. I've been dreading this fight for a minute, but let's see if we can flatten Stanley one last time. I lead with Tank. Her weakness to fighting perfectly baits Stanley's Staraptor to use close combat. But what neither of them know is that Tank is holding a Chople Berry, making an attack that looks like it wouldn't have done much damage otherwise do even less. And with the associated defense drops, a Stone Edge cleanly gets rid of Staraptor, bringing in Roserade. Now, I just swapped a Big Boned on a Giga Drain that does way more than I thought it would, but that's fine. Roserade lands a Grass Whistle, which I've basically never seen work. But Big Bone wakes up early to hit a Double Edge. But Roserade lands another Grass Whistle somehow, and this one sticks. he gets to work sapping Big Bone with Giga Drain. After a couple hits, Big Bone is in the red, and I've just got to go with my other Roserade counter. I swap Beefcake in on a weak Shadow Ball. Then, following a less weak Giga Drain, Earthquake cleanly one-shots for the KO. I wasn't expecting Roserade to be such a big source of problems. This could get bad, especially as Heracross comes in. I haven't had a good Heracross counter in so long, and this run isn't changing that trend at all. I decide to swap into Tank, anticipating a Mega Horn, only to be surprised when Heracross's close combat crits! Well, let's get out of that situation, huh? Next, I swap in Chunk, who thanks to another Chapel Berry, tanks another close combat well over half. But this was probably a stupid play. See, I need Heracross to not only not crit with close combat, but also not high roll. As close combat connects, Chunk survives on 3 HP! Honestly, I'm so impressed. As Stone Edge easily KOs after all those drops, I'm just stunned I went unpunished for risking his life there. Infernape is in now, so I swap into Unit on a weak Shadow Claw. Now Sandstorm's up 2, though my Rock types are probably too damaged to get anything out of the special defense boost it gives. A Focus Blast somehow connects to do over half, but Unit responds with an Earthquake to get an easy KO and some Shell Bell recovery. Stanley sends in Floatzel next, so I go into Beefcake on an Ice Fang, which, thanks to a Yachi Berry, he only loses a third of his remaining health to. I need to take another risk and just hope Ice Fang doesn't KO. It connects, and Beefcake survives on 5 HP! These damage rolls are killing me! At least there's no flinch, so a Leaf Storm gets rid of Floatzel without any more sweat. All that's left is Snorlax, but here, I'll just turn to Fridge. I mean, it's not like I have many other options. I swap into him on an Earthquake that does over half on a crit. Not a great start, but let's see what we can do. An Earthquake of his own connects, bringing Snorlax under half as he uses Body Slam, which gets paralysis! I'm really in it now. I've escaped some bad rolls already this battle, but I need to get lucky one more time. I click Ice Shard. If this connects, I'm golden. If this fails, I'm out one of my most important Pokemon. And Fridge doesn't freeze up, letting me pound Snorlax into the ground, beating my rival for good. And with my team somehow intact, it's time for the Elite Four. After some time with the move reminder, here are my hunks, leveled up to the cap of Lucian's Gallade. Now let's go for it! First up is Aaron. I don't anticipate him being a big threat, but he's got some tricks up his sleeve to be careful of anyways. I lead Chunk. Aaron's Yanmega hits a U-turn, switching into Caesar. A Stone Edge brings him to the red, so Aaron full restores, letting me nail him with a more accurate Earthquake instead. But now, Caesar has the opportunity to finally attack, and he uses Iron Head, doing over half and making Chunk flinch. I've gotta switch, so I go into Unit, setting up Sandstream on an X-Scissor. But one Earthquake gets rid of Aaron's second biggest threat, meaning I can deal with the rest of his team much easier. Now that Drapion's out, I swap to Fridge on an Ice Fang that misses. After a weak X-Scissor, Earthquake gets rid of him, bringing out Heracross. Oh boy, another one! This time, anticipating a close combat, I swap into Beefcake, though it does close to half still. Next, I go into Tank on a Megahorn. See, my rival strategy wasn't totally unreasonable. Next, after a close combat brings Tank to a quarter, Stone Edge misses. Forget what I said about my strategy. I guess I'll just go back to Beefcake. On a Megahorn that misses! What a series of events! It's time to bring out Big Bone then. This time Megahorn actually hits, but now close combat does 2/3 of Big Bone's health. But because she survives, a Double Edge finally gets rid of the last Heracross of the run, bringing out Yanmega again. It's not worth the risk to keep Big Bone in, so I just swap to Fridge on a double team. Now, I tried going for Ancient Power, but Yanmega's evasion is too great. This allows him to connect with a Bug Buzz, doing over half before Ancient Power finally connects to KO, leaving just Vespiquen. Here, Ancient Power connects, bringing Vespiquen to just half health? She's bulkier than I thought. But after a hard attack order brings Fridge to just 20 HP, Ancient Power connects and gets the Omni Boost, maybe a little too late, but a win's a win. It's probably not a good sign though that Aaron was this hard, right? And maybe the most important challenge is coming up next. The battle of the best ground trainer. Is it Bertha with her flimsy squad of dorks, or me and my bulked up beefcakes? Speaking of, that's exactly who I lead with. As Whiscash uses a weak Aqua Tail, a Leaf Storm tears through her for an instant KO, sending in Gliscor. But I have a pretty good counter here. I just swap into Fridge on a weak Ice Fang. Then, after an Earthquake brings Fridge just above half, I respond with a Blizzard that takes Gliscor down outright. Golem's out now, finally some overlap. So I go for Earthquake, wiping her out too. 3 attacks, 3 deaths. Rhyperior's in, so I decide to go back to Beefcake on a resisted Earthquake, which still does almost half. But now, another Leaf Storm gets rid of Bertha's scariest Pokemon outright, leaving just Hippowdon. I'm not sure why she didn't send her out sooner, but might as well make this an honor battle. I swap in Unit on a weak Crunch. Then, I set up a Yawn as Bertha's Hippowdon goes for an Earthquake that doesn't even do a quarter of Unit's health. I see if I can fish for defense drops with Crunch, but this just results in Hippowdon yawning Unit. So once Bertha's Hippowdon falls asleep, I just swap back into Beefcake. A Giga Drain brings Hippowdon to the red, so assuming Bertha will heal, I just go for another to do half. But since it looks like it might be a range, I swap to Leaf Storm on my final attack to take Hippowdon down for the win. I'm the greatest ground trainer of all time. Now, Flint is definitely going to be the easiest of the Elite Four, like he is in most runs. After Houndoom sets up Sunny Day, Chunk wipes him out with a single Earthquake. That causes him to bring out his Infernape, who uses an Earthquake of his own, but Chunk's got more than enough defense to survive that over half health, so second Earthquake gets rid of Flint's scariest Pokemon. Next up is Rapidash, but the sun is out, so I need to fix that in order to prevent any Solar Beam shenanigans. I swap into Unit as Rapidash sets up Solar Beam. Then, I swap into Beefcake, who takes only chip damage from it. Rapidash is a bafflingly bad special attacker, and because he set up Sunny Day next turn, I'm basically damage free as an Earthquake sends him 6 feet under. Flint sends Flareon out, so I just go with Tank, who tanks an Overheat at a little below half health, which is kinda bad actually. Next, Flareon outspeeds to use Will-O-Wisp. Okay, maybe I should have planned this better, but it doesn't matter because Earthquake KOs even with Tank's attack halved. This just leaves Magmortar, so attempting to get rid of the sun, I swap back into Unit. But Magmortar hits a hard Flamethrower in the process, bringing her below half. Well, okay, I guess I need to go back into Chunk. He comes in on a weak Flamethrower. Then, as Magmortar sets up Solar Beam, a final Earthquake gets rid of him for an easy win. Lucian is definitely the hardest trainer in the Elite Four, but I think I can take him. I just have to plan for it right. I lead Unit. Sandstream's really putting up wilt numbers for me this run. As Mr. Mime sets up Reflect, I go for Yawn. A Crunch brings Mr. Mime under half as he just goes for Light Screen for waste of a turn. Now that he's asleep though, I waste a turn going for Yawn to stall out Reflect. But as I go for it again, Mr. Mime wakes up and hits a hard Psychic! This actually works great for me though, because now that Lucian heals, a Crunch brings Mr. Mime back and puts him to sleep right after. Coincidentally, as Reflect ends, another Crunch gets rid of Mr. Mime, bringing in Alakazam. Because he has Energy Ball, I can bring Beefcake to take it for only about a quarter damage. Alakazam goes for Psychic next though, which does a ton. But Beefcake survives in the low yellow, and he can respond with a Crunch to get rid of Alakazam in a single hit. Espeon's out now, and because Signal Beam would probably KO, I go into Big Bone instead. It does more damage than I thought it would, especially after a Psychic also sends her to half, and Crunch doesn't quite KO. I anticipated Lucian healing, but Espeon just attacks, so Big Bone survives a Psychic in the red before getting rid of Espeon. But now, Gallade is in, and I've got zero good answers to him. The only thing I can think to do is send in Tank. She comes in on a Drain Punch that only does a fifth, before Gallade goes for Leaf Blade. But Tank's got a Rhino Berry equipped, so she survives at just under half and can fire back with an Earthquake, bringing Gallade to a quarter after his Citrus Berry. She did a great job, but now I need to figure out what to do next. I think Fridge can take a Leaf Blade, so I swap him in, and even though it does 2/3 of his health, he survives, letting me nail Gallade with an Earthquake after Lucian heals. And because it brings Gallade to the red, an Ice Shard lets Fridge get the KO without taking any more damage, leaving just Bronzong. I decide to swap back into Unit as Bronzong hits a hard Psychic to do half of her remaining health. Then I go for Yawn. Psychic thankfully doesn't crit, so now I've got free reign to swap into Chunk. On an Earthquake! Okay, didn't see that one coming, and it also crit. So I think I should go back to Tank. Because Bronzong's asleep, I try out a Mega Horn, which sends them to half, as Bronzong wakes up to hit a nasty Psychic. If Tank's next attack doesn't get the drop, she'll die. Mega Horn looks like it'll be the only move that can KO, so I risk the 15% miss, and it connects! With that, Bronzong falls, and I just got out of a way too tight battle for the win. Finally, with that, I'm at Cynthia, one of the hardest champions of any of the games. I use my remaining rare candies and head in. Can my team flatten hers? Only one way to find out. I lead with Unit, yawning and putting her Spiritomb to sleep after taking a Shadow Ball and swapping into Big Bone. Permanent Sandstorm isn't ideal, but I really needed to put Spiritomb to sleep. While she sets up Curse, I need to say that I wasn't in the clearest headspace during this battle. This and the Lucian battle were filmed right at the very end of my finals, after I just stayed up late writing a massive paper. And combined with not having played in several days, I knew the strategy I wanted to go with, but I forgot to set up the right items to really give myself the best chance. Once I get 4 curses set up, I switch to Rock Polishes as Spiritomb finally wakes up. That was super lucky, by the way. I wanted to give Big Bone a recovery item, but without one, I just had to set up as long as I could. And thankfully, Spiritomb got a max turn sleep. I'm able to get up to +2 speed as a result, but no recovery means that Spiritomb's attacks leave Big Bone in the red, preventing me from getting any further. Well, if that's the case, it's time to attack. Big Bone now outspeeds Spiritomb, felling her in a single attack. Cynthia brings in my Lodic, which is great for me because I had no idea how to deal with her otherwise, so an Earthquake outspeed gets rid of her too. Lucario's out next, but even though he could use Extreme Speed, he doesn't, so now I'm 3 for 3. But this brings out Garchomp, and here's where Sandstream comes back to bite me. Thanks to the permanent Sandstorm, Garchomp has Sand Veil activated, meaning my attacks are much less likely to connect. But this doesn't even matter, because she outspeeds and straight up snipes Big Bone with a flamethrower. Rest in peace, bud. Big Bone was really my break glass in case of emergency Pokemon, there to fix any mess I got myself stuck in. And she technically did that here. Not only did she get rid of 2 of Cynthia's most dangerous Pokemon, but she now lets Fridge come in safely. And Ice Shard connects to not KO. Actually, thanks to Garchomp's Citrus Berry, he kinda doesn't even do half. So now, after surviving a flamethrower, I've gotta roll the dice on Ice Shard connecting again, and this time it doesn't. Flamethrower gets rid of one of my most versatile attackers. I'm not sure what to do here. Garchomp has super effective coverage against all my team, except for Unit, but she's already damaged. I think she might be able to survive an attack, but will that even be enough? I bring her in. Garchomp uses Earthquake, which she survives in the yellow to set up Yawn, which thankfully can't miss. Now, I just need to see what Unit can do. Garchomp uses Flamethrower, which she survives on just 6 HP before she uses Earthquake, which misses, but Garchomp's asleep, so I get some more rolls at least. My next Earthquake misses too, but the one after that connects to KO Garchomp. We're rolling now! Okay, I let Roserade wipe Unit away with Extra Sensory, which sucks, because she's been a great lead, maybe my best ever. But it's the final battle now, so I think this makes the most sense. Now I go to my Roserade killer, Beefcake. Roserade immediately toxics him, putting him on a timer, but an Earthquake KOs outright, leaving just Togekiss left. There's not really much I can do with Beefcake here, so I decide to go for a Crunch. But after taking an Air Slash under half health, Beefcake flinches. One more Air Slash KOs. Rest in peace to one of the best and beefiest starters out there. I bring in Chunk. Thanks to permanent Sandstorm, I don't think Togekiss can kill, but his coverage isn't exactly inspiring. In fact, Water Pulse leaves him just over a quarter. But that's all he needs as a Stone Edge connects to KO Togekiss outright for the win. And with that, I just beat a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Platinum using only heavy ground types. This run was really fun. Ground is one of my favorite types, and I got to work with some of my favorites here, so this game really sped by. I was surprised going through though by how many of the battles were harder than I thought they'd be. A lot of my Pokemon didn't have a ton of type coverage or special attacks, so I had to work with what I had. And that made things a little tricky sometimes, especially against Wake and my rival. But let me know who you think the MVP of the run is. I think it's probably Unit the Hippowdon or Beefcake the Torterra, although everyone really packed a serious punch. Finally, I just want to add a special thanks to Soa5766 for recommending this challenge. I had a blast and I hope you all did too. Please send me any challenge run recs you'd like to see me do in the future. I think it's really fun to do your ideas and see how much of a pickle I can get myself into. And that's a wrap. Please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. If you have any suggestions or things you'd like to see me do, leave a comment at me on Twitter or email me with your suggestion at ed40plays@gmail.com. Next up, we're going to Unova for my banning half the Pokédex series in Pokemon White. Catch you all there!